Hi, everybody. Every year, the Diocese of Metuchen asks every parish in our diocese to support a missionary order or a missionary society that needs our support in their work in spreading the gospel and attending to the needs of the people they serve. And these societies usually come to us in the springtime. And we have welcomed, in the many years we've been doing this, religious communities and societies whose work is here in this country and in so many countries around the world. Now, the pandemic of this year has changed a lot of stuff for the ways that we're trying to do our ministry here and presented some challenges. And in January, I received the notice from the Diocese of Metuchen that the Benedictine Sisters of St. Agnes from Tanzania were assigned to St. Charles. And at that time, we were thinking, how are we going to do this? Because we certainly weren't clear yet about what protocols would be allowed for travel, how many people would actually be in church. And so we decided we needed to pivot. And we've been doing so many things on our YouTube channel and so many things in the internet world. We thought, why not interview the society? Why not talk to the members of this mission right now here on our YouTube channel? And then what we'll do is we will make available at the end of this time of talking with them how you can support financially the good work that the sisters are doing in Tanzania. So I thought the first thing we would do is if I could just have you both introduce yourselves and tell us, we are at 3 different time zones right now as we're recording this. So maybe, sister, if you want to introduce yourself and tell us where you're at.
My name is Sister Gloriosa Komba. I'm a Benedictine sister of St. Agnes from Tanzania in East Africa. At the time being, actually, I am in Oregon. The city is Climbers Fall, is south of Portland, just 30 minutes from the border with California.
For you folks at St. Charles, I'm a diocesan priest of the Diocese of St. Cloud, Minnesota. And I was released to work with Maryknoll for almost 20 years in East Africa. And during that time, I got to know this community of Benedictine sisters, and more than know, to really appreciate the special, unique role that they are playing in the church in Tanzania. We'll come back to that later. But at any rate, that's my connection with them. And when they began their ministries here in the United States, sort of like in mission to our US church, I was able to work with Sister Gloriosa and the members of her community to set up a nonprofit board. I chair their board of directors. So that's kind of how I remain connected and involved with the ongoing ministry of the sisters.
That's wonderful. That's great. And I do, to echo what you're saying, Father Bill, is that the idea is that, you know, the internet, for all the craziness in the internet, it does have an opportunity to bring us closer together and make this very vast world a really more of a community, especially for those of us of faith. So I thank you for both. Sister, I don't know if you had to wake up earlier to get to this because it's morning there now, but thank you for doing this. Before we get into talking about the work of the Benedictine Sisters of St. Agnes, what we're doing here at St. Charles is we're asking people, after we've been through the pandemic, what have you learned about yourself? We've been through a lot and a lot of challenges and changes. And so I thought I wouldn't, if you didn't mind, I'd like to ask both of you, you know, maybe, sister, if you want to start, what have you learned about yourself after going through this whole year?
For myself, I learned that being like not disconnected, like not associating with people, sometimes is really hard, because if you have been associating with people and then now suddenly you have been stopped, like we have to be careful with this pandemic. It's really hard, and it made me like more to be more deeply trusted in God. Like we need now to be more close to God than we have been close to each other.
Right.
It's been also a challenge too, because you have been connected with people, and now by suddenly you are far away from them, you have just is hard. I don't know even how to explain it more better, but it somehow it is hard.
Yeah, I could dovetail right in. I think again, it's one of those cultural things with the people in Tanzania where I live. The human connection is so important. They have a strong, strong emphasis on community and interdependence. I mean, that I learned a lot from the Tanzanians that we need to rely on each other. And COVID really dropped these barriers in, even to the point of going to the grocery store with a mask on. I often wonder, that lady, maybe that's one of my old girlfriends that I don't recognize.
Right.
So, but I serve on a lot of nonprofit boards and like the Marinola Missioners, and I'm a director of Catholic Relief Service. All of that now, this past year, we have had virtually no face-to-face meetings. It was all electronic.
Right.
Now, in some way, like we just said earlier, it's a real advantage. We can connect globally, just like we are right now. But it's still a way of being present. And there's no substitute. And I think Sister's reflecting that. Being present means in that kind of direct contact where you can really appreciate the gift of one another.
Right.
It's really been a very unique year.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that what we're trying to do here is to say, it's not so much about going back to something, everybody wants to go back to normal, which I understand, but it's how are we moving forward? How are we moving forward, and with what we've learned about ourselves, and as Sister Gloriosa said, about relying more on God, and as you said, Father Bill, about relying on one another. So in that context, Sister, could you just briefly tell us a little bit about your religious community, about the Benedictine Sisters of St. Agnes, and how was the community founded, and what is the kind of work that they are engaged in?
We are newly really founded because we are only 75 years since we were founded. And we were founded by, originally there were 3 girls who were really pagan, where they were not even baptized. When they saw the Anglican sisters on that area where they were living, they told the priest who was taking care of them that they wanted to be like them. And the priest told them that they needed to be baptized first, to be Christian, then they can be sisters. But they kept, because they were living with the priest at the church, they kept asking him. That was 1911 when they started asking him. So they grew. They were stayed at the church, helping him to teach some catechism to other children. But in 1922, they moved to the community where the Benedictine now sisters, the choosing one, were in that area. So that's where they were sent to learn how to do to become nun. By that time,
those sisters were from what country? The Tutsi.
The choosing were Germany. They were from Germany.
Yeah,
they were from Germany, and they were also monks. They were together, the monks and the sisters. By that time, 1922, that's the time they made their first vows. There were 3 actually when they started. Later on, 3 more joined because there were 6 of them later until they put their first vows. And then from there, they were like the 3rd order of St. Benedict. They call them Oblates. They continued to be Oblates until 1938, where the abbot, who was also the bishop of that area, Peramiho, he asked a permission from Rome if he can start the community for African sisters who will help him also to evangelize the area. Because by that time, actually, it was the Christianity. That's when the Christianity was being introduced. So they needed local people who will be able to evangelize the Catholic belief too. So in 1938, Pope, I think Pius XI, he was the one who gave that permission for the sister to start the community. By that time, they were a group of Black sisters, because they were not connected directly with European, because by that time it was colonial, so it was not easy for the African to be connected, to be the same community with the European.
Got it.
So I think in 1938, that's when we can say that's when all of them, they made their their final vows. Actually, they continued to take sisters too. But 1952, they moved from Peramio to Chipole, where we are now, because the community was getting bigger and bigger, and the place with the European sister were not enough. So they moved the African community to Chipole. That's where we are now.
Wow.
So they continued there. When they were there, actually, the local people gave them the land. They built the convent. That's where we are up to now. We moved there in 1952.
Yeah.
In 1967, they have their first, because when they moved, they were still under the Europeans, Mother Superior and Novice Masters. They were still all European. Right. But in 1967, that's when the first Mother Superior was elected African. But 1968, they started another community in another diocese, because the community was really getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So in 1968, they started another community in Njombe, which is another priory. But up to now, actually, we have 4 priory. 2 of them was started also one in Same, more north, and the other one in Mpanda, which is more west side of where we are, of Tanzania.
When you're speaking, sister, you know what I was so drawn toward is that your religious community began with 3 young women who had really no knowledge of faith, noticing what others were doing, and said, we want some of that. And how your community in that country has grown by other women looking and saying, I want to be a part of that. What is the work that your sisters have been doing that has had other women that say, I want to be a part of that? Like, what is the work that you're doing? Because it's obviously something really beautiful that's happening there, that you continue to have vocations and you continue to have growth in your community.
Since we follow the rule of St. Benedict, which is prayer and work. Right. So we pray 7 times per day. Wow. And then we also work. So our sisters from the beginning, actually, as I said, the abbot or the bishop started because he wanted more evangelization for other people. Right. So our really most thing is like catechist. So our sisters are working in the diocese and in different parishes like a catechist, and they work like in the parish office. They do things like that, but also they teach. We have teachers from kindergarten actually to university. So we also have sisters who are nurses, doctors. They work in different hospitals, private and even government hospital, government schools. Right. We have our own dispensary and hospital, but also we do work with the diocese hospital and the government too. So we have sisters who also work like they work in like a social worker, helping people in different places. Right. Yeah, we also have schools where we teach. Back then it was like domestic science for girls, but like now it is like more vocational school, trade school. Right. Right. So our sisters themselves, they teach in those schools.
I might jump in too to tag on. You know, currently at the main community, she referred to the place as Tripoli, there are 500 vowed sisters. Wow. And as she said, that's the mother house in the literal sense of starting 3 other communities, one of which is equally as large. So they have a terrific impact throughout the country. They're in 11 dioceses now, doing all this healthcare education. They also have an orphanage. So The one thing though I want to make in terms of this question, what draws these young women to join the community? And by the way, when you folks who are watching this, if you go to the website, which Monsignor will post, you will notice one of the issues at the Mother House is space. They do not have enough building to house the young sisters.
Wow.
The young sisters in first professions are living like in a bunkhouse, But here's the thing. Culturally, for a young woman to not marry and have children is a real challenge. And so when a young woman says, I would like to become a sister, the parents and grandma and grandpa would say, oh, no, let somebody else do that. We want to have our family continue on. That's such a huge, important value. So it's quite a cultural adjustment or commitment to commit one's life completely to religious life like they have. It's really a significant vocation or calling. I think in your parish at St. Charles, you're kind of emphasizing ministerially the idea of being called, right?
Yeah, right.
And I tell you, this is a living example of it.
And as you're both speaking, and I'm thinking what Father Bill brought up about we're about trying to create a culture of calling, that in every moment of people's life, God is calling us to something. It's not just when you're 22 years old, what do I want to be when I grow up? But I'm thinking, Sister, so much of your work with the people of Tanzania is to help them figure out what their calling is too. Certainly calling of faith, but I mean in terms of the schooling that you have, the trade schools that you're running, that must be a very satisfying thing that your sisters are helping the people of that country figure out, well, what am I supposed to do with my life?
Where we are, they don't have any other dispensary close by. So most of them, they just come to our area so that they can be treated. And sometimes you can find that we really don't have much space to help everybody, especially during malaria, when it is rain season. So it's really hard, but they all like to come to be treated to our place.
Right.
And even in the schools too, the same thing.
I think, we're really looking at evangelization because as she indicated, when they first started, there were virtually no Christians. And even today, in the dispensaries and the schools, good share of those folks are not Christian. So they are evangelizing by their very life commitment.
Right.
Doing these very grassroots ministerial connections with the local people.
We was thinking about this a lot in terms of talking to you both today, that, certainly in the past year, we've really been focused on medical treatment, on health, on protocols for people. And it was interesting for you to mention, Sister Gloriosa, the fact that malaria is an ongoing challenge in that country. It doesn't go away just by a magic vaccine. I'm just wondering about what do you see in your country as some of the medical challenges that your religious community is trying to help with?
Yeah, the most need is as I said, the hospital medication. Like as I said, in our area, those dispensaries we have, when they started to build that dispensary, actually it was just because we are a little bit outside the country. But they built those mostly for the people who were working with us, the students who were there, and the sisters. But suddenly everybody, the people around, they didn't have anything, so they have to come there. So you can find that we have really a very small building. We would like to expand it because most the big challenge is that, like during malaria time, even during just normal time, especially for children and women with expected mothers, it's so hard to help them in our little clinic. Because sometimes they come there, they have a lot of challenge, they have a lot of problems, so we need to take them. Sometimes they die on our face. It's really very hard for us. So we'd like to expand that so that we can help while they come to us, we can just help there. So because we have now our sisters who are nurses, who are doctor, we can help them there. But still, because of the area is not much equipped for helping them while they are there, we have to take them far away. And even for transportation too, We have no much developed an ambulance things to take them when they are serious, to run them to the hospital. The closest hospital is the Peramiho, where that's where we came from, where the European they are. Then sometimes they die on the way. Not everybody there have a car. She can just get in the car and go. They come to us. So sometimes we have only 2 cars. We don't have much to help them. So it's really sad to see them dying on our face, that we cannot help them.
I was going to tell them the story, sister, how they did a fundraising for a long time to build a new dispensary. And when they finally got the dispensary built, the government inspector came and said, you have to install a gas operated backup system. So they had the people put that in. And on the Sunday, before they were officially begin, the gas sprung a leak and it burned the whole thing down. So they had to start over again.
Yeah.
But one of the things on this healthcare thing too, they're still dealing with the everyday, parasites and a lot of the things that we're not very familiar with, but also with the pandemic of COVID. Research has indicated in sub-Saharan Africa, it's not really very prevalent. And that the biggest single factor is the lack of connectivity. There's very little travel and movement, plus a younger population. So they deal with it, but it's the more the everyday things, like she said, malaria, that's still, especially with young people, that takes a lot of lives.
Would you both speak? I think about how we do have many challenges in our own country when it comes to healthcare, and there's a certain inequity that takes place about people who have access to healthcare and others that don't. But I think when you listen about this in a global way, you sort of say, okay, maybe it's not quite as bad as we think sometimes here, because some of the basic stuff that we have access to, all of us do, is not available. And that's, I suspect, what you're trying to do there, sisters, to expand people's accessibility to healthcare and to well-being.
Yeah, and especially like for us, we don't have most of the people, especially in the village where we are, they don't have health insurance. So if they get sick, they don't even have a single money to go to the hospital, but they have to, because we are there, we have to help them wherever they come. So that sometimes they can take maybe grain, like to exchange with the medication. But it's difficult for us because we need money to buy this medicine to give them. But when they come, you can't say, no, we don't have medicine. Whatever we have to share with them. At the same time, we have to find any means to get money so that we can buy more medication, so that when they come there, they have to be treated. So it's really, here compared, it's really different because no health insurance, no nothing.
It allows me to maybe a segue into, like, for you people at St. Charles, how will your contributions be used? Well, Sister said 2 things. One, Benedictines, they're self-sufficient. You should see these sisters out in the cornfield by hand, milking cows, chickens. So they take care of their personal needs. But what she has said about the healthcare, all the stuff they need, and education, the materials and the buildings, and educating these young sisters, I can't think of a more beneficial way to reach out in a way that has terrific impact. So that's how the donations for this mission appeal will be used.
Yeah, I think that's important. It's really helping people really do the work that is so essential. And again, it's some of the stuff we take for granted. I think it's so interesting that, Sister, you said that, people maybe try to pay in kind, by giving you something, but it's like, but we still need the money, because they're not going to take corn for the medicine when we try to get it for ourselves. So I think that's such a practical way of people understanding what's going on. Yeah.
And we have also orphanage center, actually. We have orphanage center. We have these children, they are sometimes just 1 month, 1 day, they come to us. We have used to take them back, maybe they're 8, 6, they can go back to their family. And some of them, the have lost both parents.
Mm.
So they come to us, so we have to help them. So when we were taking them back, so we found that they were really dying. They stay with us until 8 years old, and then they go home with those environment. They have no special person to take care, so they die. So we found that maybe we have to stay with them longer. So now we decided to have to stay with them longer until maybe they're 18, 21, they finish school, because we have school there. They can go there too. And then after they are grown up, they are mature enough, then they can leave. 20, 21, or 22, they can leave. But we have to help them too. Like now, there are more than 100 there in the center, from the babies up to those young ones. But they all big challenge, because they have to go to school. We have to send them to treat them. They are sick, and sometimes they come really with like HIV. They are already affected, but we have to take care of them until whenever God wants. So it's still really a challenge. And sometimes these babies, they're just left on our doors, so we don't know even their parents where they are from. They're just left on our doors. But we still have to take care of them too. So that's why coming to you guys, asking for your help, because of this kind of challenge we are getting, so we can help.
We're lucky in many ways in our country that there is a social service system that does try to help people. But I think all of us who have worked in this country, and I think the two of you as well, would say it's not as perfect as people think it is. And there's a lot of holes in our own system in this country. But to then think about there are places in the world where you really are the system, you know, sister, you and your community, you're the ones, there's nobody saying, well, oh, well, we can send the child over here. And as women of faith, it's sort of like, no, we have to take care of this child. It doesn't matter where he or she came from. We have to take care of this child. So that's such important work that we need to support in ways that we can. Last thing I just want to ask is both of you, because people in our parish, we're very interested in cultural diversity. We have a number of families who are from India, so we celebrate the great feast of Our Lady of Alancani, and then we have a number of Spanish-speaking parishioners, so we celebrate Our Lady of Guadalupe in December. So I just was wondering, sister, especially you, and then Father Bill as well, can you describe what the church is like in Tanzania, and is there something different about it that that you would share and say, well, this is, if you came to church in Tanzania, this is what it would be like?
Maybe Father can start it.
Okay, and then you can jump in. Well, one of the things that whenever I've had visitors come to East Africa, and or if I take people to visit, they are most often impressed by the liturgies. You know, they're long and vibrant and all inclusive. Everybody's involved. And I think it really captures the essence of public worship, when people just allow themselves to be so fully engaged. I remember my visiting bishop came, we had confirmation out in the bush because it was too large a group to have inside the building. And the confirmation went for 6 hours and nobody left. And our visitor said it was like the greatest liturgy of their lives.
Wow.
So that's just one example.
Yeah. I just, want to say again to both of you that this has been an enlightening conversation with both of you. And I feel that not only the work of the Benedictine Sisters of St. Agnes in Tanzania, but also your own callings, your own life story, I think have come through in a way that maybe not a 12-minute presentation in church, not to diminish that, but I think it may not have some of the richness of what both of you shared. I'm so grateful to be able to share this with the rest, the rest of our community. So I thank both of you, Father Bill and Sister Gloriosa, for your time today and for your willingness to come and share this. One of the great quotes from our patron, St. Charles Borromeo, was that he was telling his priests at this time, but I think it's for all of us who are working in the vineyard, that he said to them, you should cover yourself in the blood of Christ so that all you do will be a work of love. so that all you do will be a work of love. So I am grateful to both of you, and especially in this case to the sisters in Tanzania, for all that you do that is indeed a work of love. So thank you both for being here. I appreciate it.